Hello everyone, it's Stephanie Sebbing from Quilt Addicts Anonymous. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a wonky star. There are no special templates needed for this, just your plain old rotary cutter and ruler, and then something to mark with. I'm using a friction gel pen because I love them, but pencil will work too. And I am using Lulu from Robert Kaufman, and I really like this line. Whenever I'm purchasing fabric for the shop, I try to never get anything that's like really baby, because I feel like that's very limiting, because then you have something that works for a year or two and then it just is too young for the child going forward, but they may still love that quilt. But I love lines like this where it's a little bit more modern in the way that the fabrics look, and the colors could easily work for, like this whole section here could work really well for a boy, and then this whole section here with the purples and that little citron and the grays would look perfect for a girl. So that's what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to make a little baby girl crib quilt with the wonky star. And this pattern is going to be free to download if you are a member of Stashing with Stephanie, and otherwise it'll be just a small fee for your digital download. We're going to start doing free patterns as part of our Stashing with Stephanie program. If you haven't heard of it, it's really cool. What we do is we send you 12 fat quarters of the latest fabric lines to come out each month for the price of 10. So you're paying $29.99 plus shipping for 3 yards of fabric, plus we give you a coupon code to get $10 off a $20 purchase of additional yardage. So if you were in Stashing with Stephanie this month, you could get the 12 fat quarters that you need to do the center, and then you could get a coupon code to get what you need for the rest of the quilt for an additional $10, and you would have the pattern for free, so you could get a baby quilt together for about 40 bucks plus shipping. So that's a pretty good deal. Head on over to shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com and search for Stashing with Stephanie. We do new lines each month. There's all different types. We've done Allison Glass, Tulip Pink, Cave Facet has been in there. We're doing some cotton and steel next month. So it's really fabulous fabrics that I personally have picked and I personally have arranged in colors that look really good together. So you won't get the whole line. This is a fat quarter bundle of the whole line, but you'll get 12 prints that really work well together. And if you just want to use that in a project, you can. And going forward, you're also going to get free patterns that you can use to create that with too. So if you're already a member, this is an awesome bonus. If not, you can be inspired and you can get patterns as you need them, and it'll give you some good fat quarter friendly projects to do. So let's get started. So one of the things that I really liked about this project is that there's lots of great low volume neutrals. So they're really hot and trendy right now, and there's just these great designs and just a hint, a little bit of color in them to help them stand out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do kind of a scrappy low volume background, and it's going to work really well because all these fabrics are meant to go together in the line, but the appearance is going to be nice and scrappy when it's all together. So we're going to start by making our wonky stars first. So first I picked one of each of the background squares that I'm using with this. And now we're going to be pairing that with our first long side of our wonky star. So I am just using 3 fabrics for the points of my wonky star. I'm going to use a 4 fat quarter for the center of my star. So one of these is going to repeat in each block. So I'm just going to make sure that as I'm doing my blocks that I'm repeating a different one. So like the next one, I'll probably repeat this one, and then the third I'll repeat. Well, maybe I won't repeat the citron because I want that to just kind of be a pop of color here and there. I don't want it to be overwhelming in the block. So we'll kind of see how that all shakes out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and if you've ever done half square triangles, this is pretty much the same thing except it's a rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up from corner to corner on the wrong side, and I'm going to draw a line from point to point. And I'm going to do that on all of my pieces to create my star. Okay, so this next part is going to feel a little weird. You're going to follow the instructions in your pattern, and you're going to make a mark on the left side of your seam allowance. So you're going to measure over from the right side and make a mark, and that measurement is in your pattern to go along with this. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up the line you drew from the top right corner to where the mark is, which you can see underneath here. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place so you can kind of see how cool this is. So I'm pinning it so that my line is right over that pin there, and then also down here. Okay, so I've got my line right over the mark I made, and then also even with that top corner. And now when I fold this over, it is exactly even. So as long as you keep everything nice and lined up, so I definitely recommend pinning for this step. It's gonna work, and you're gonna be able to create a walking triangle with no special templates. So I'm gonna do that for the rest of my squares, and then we're gonna get started sewing this. So I put my sewing machine needle in the center position. That'll help me sew right on top of this line that we drew, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do next. So I'm actually gonna start with the bottom center because there's more for the feed dogs to grab a hold of, and it'll just be easier to feed everything in. Make sure you remove those pins as you come to them. And I am just sewing along that line, aiming to come right where this tip is and keep those nice and together. And then I'm just going to repeat and chain piece all of these. Now our next step is going to be to trim these to a 1/4 inch seam, but before I do that, I want to make sure on each one of them that when I fold it over, that my corner goes all the way to the corner, or at least close enough. This one is definitely close enough, so we've got a nice wonky star going on here. I'm going to check all the others, and then I'm going to trim my 1/4 inch seam. That's pretty good. If you find that your corners aren't going all the way to the corner, what you could do is you could sew just on the seam side of that line that you drew, and that will help give you a little bit more room to move when it comes to pushing things over. Like this one, I sewed a little bit to the right of it, so I don't have as much room on this side, but it's close enough, so I'm going to leave it be. All right, so now I'm going to trim these down to a 1/4 inch seam, and then we're ready for the next point of our wonky star. All right, so when you flip this over, this is the part of your wonky star. So what we want to cut off is this bit over here, because this part is going to be staying. All right, so now I have to press that triangle over, so that way we have a square again to work with when we sew the other part on. Go ahead and set that seam first, and then press it over. And if you wanted, you could trim this little bit that's hanging off there. So this part is really similar, except we don't have to arrange anything kind of oddly on the block. We're just gonna flip these over. We're gonna draw a line from point to point on the wrong side, and then we're gonna sew right on top of that again. This time it's a little easier because we're dealing with a square instead of a rectangle that's a little cockeyed. So the first one I'm gonna grab is my little citron one, because I wanna make sure that that's not paired with a big triangle that is citron. So what I'm doing is I'm lining this up right sides together with the with that line going from about middle of the block down to the center, and these are going to overlap just a little bit. Now you don't have to pin this, but you certainly can if you want to just kind of keep everything in place as you're working. I'm going to go ahead and put these through the sewing machine as well, sewing right on top of that line, or you could sew just to the hair to the inside of where that line is, so you can have a little bit more room when you're pressing it over to create your triangle corner. Now for the rest of these, I'm just kind of making sure that my purples aren't ever duplicated, so that way I get a nice scrappy look. So in this case, we have 2 different purples, and so it's gonna look cute. If you don't know what chain piecing is, we've got an entire video on it in our beginner quilting video tutorial series. It is completely free to watch, and we'll link it down below. So unless you're really worried about it, you really don't need to check every single one of these. When you're dealing with a square, it's a lot easier to get your point to curve over to the right spot. But if you want, you can double check that when you fold this over, your point is going all the way to the point of that rectangle, and that you'll have a square piece to work with. But just like before, I'm gonna trim off this edge so that I can have a nice 1/4 inch seam. Just like before, we need to press these open. I'm gonna go ahead and set my seam first, then I'm going to press it open. You want to be careful whenever you're pressing a triangle seam open, because you are working on a bias and you can stretch it out of place. So just have some respect for it, go slow, don't go crazy with it, you'll be just fine. So that is looking really cute. We have one really long triangle and one little one, and it'll look real fun when we get them all together. So because my outside corners are going to be this low volume fabric, I am going to trim off all of these little dog ears. That way it doesn't create a shadow underneath, and we'll just have a nice cute little sweet baby quilt when we're all done. So since this is such a light block, what I did is I flipped my pressing mat over so you can see it a little easier. And what I have done here is I am really kind of flipping it around and just kind of making sure that things are in different areas and that the color is really spread around. One thing I'm not liking is I've got two purples here, and then I had the really light purple, and I feel like that is making things get lost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these two around, and then I'm also going to switch these two around. That way my pluses are in different areas and my purple dots are in different areas, and that gives it a little bit more variety, except now I still have it between two purples, so we're going to switch it around just a little bit more here. This is always challenging to kind of figure it out. That's better, because now we have a nice green next to the purple, so that's good. And we can put our plus dot here, and we might just have two next to each other. That's okay, it'll look like it's blended into each other, or we could flip it again. Let's do this. That way there is a little bit of break in between that, and then this is a different background color, so it'll have some distinction between it. So, let's even move it a little more. Let's do this. Yes, I like this layout because now we don't have any of the same ones next to each other. We've got the little really light purple next to green to help make it stand out more. And our pluses are way over here, and we're going to be good to go. So now I just am assembling a 9-patch block. It's really easy from here. I'm going to sew everything into rows and then join my rows together, and then we're done with this block. I'm going to start with that first row. At this point, it's just normal everyday piecing. I set my sewing machine up to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm just going to go ahead and sew down. One thing you can do to speed up this process even more is you can chain piece your rows. I'm going to go ahead and grab the next two, flip those right sides together. Now to save a little bit of time, I'm going to wait to press until the very end. So what I do is I just lay everything out back in the order that I sewed it. That way I can make sure that everything is still facing the right direction, I sewed the right seam, and then I'm going to sew the other side and get these rows together. All right, so whenever you're pressing, you want to kind of press towards the path of least resistance. So in this case, we've got 2 points on the inner side, so it's going to be easiest to press to the outer triangles. Well, squares. There are squares out there. There's lots of triangles in this, but not in the corner. I'm going to go ahead and press that open, just to the side there. We'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, one down. Now for the center, the path of least resistance is going to be to that center square because we have points here and it would be difficult to point this way. Plus our seams are going to nest because since we press outside here and we press inside here, everything's going to come together really well when we come to join the block. Set that seam again and then just press that seam underneath. Sometimes I get asked, do you press your seams open or to the side? And the answer really is, it just depends on what I'm doing. For something like this, it makes perfect sense to press a seam to the side because it's going to make it easier to join your rows later. For something where it's going to be like a 60-degree triangle. It's going to be easier to join everything together if you press everything open. So it really just depends on the situation, and you can either follow the recommendations in your pattern, or once you get to know, you know, what works a little bit better in different situations, you can make your own choice on that. All right, everything is still wonky. We still have our big squares or triangles all on the right side of that block, and everything is still scattered around quite a bit, but I can still see my nice little sweet star amid that low volume background. So really cute. So now, because we press those seams in opposite directions, our seams are going to be going in opposite directions here. You can kind of see that from above. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get it so that the seams lock in place really nicely. You shouldn't feel a bump or a gap in there. It should just kind of feel like a threshold in your house. And then I always pin in the right side of that seam allowance right over where you're going to be sewing. Sometimes I see people pin like, do it on the other side. Like they'll get it all together right here, and then they pin like way out here. And you're going to be sewing right here, so that's why I pin right there. So if you pin all the way down here, you could at one point have it nice and together up here, but it's not going to stay that way. The other thing I see people do often is they'll just like do this, and that doesn't hold anything together either. You really need to pin where you're going to be sewing. So take the time, get those seams locked together with the nesting seams, and then pin right where you're going to be sewing down, and you'll have much better joints and be very happy with your results. All right, so we don't have any points to match on the edges, so I'm not going to pin there. You certainly can if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and sew this together and then do the same thing with the other row, and then we're done with our block. So I flipped my cut and press mat over again so you can see the block a little better, since it is very low volume. And you can see that it's just a really cute little wonky star. Some of the triangles come out bigger than others. One thing to note is this is not a 45-degree angle because it's going at a steeper curve. So that point isn't going to go all the way to your edge like it would normally. So it's going to look a little bit like your blocks are floating, but it actually is going to make life a lot easier when you go to put these together, because you will not have any seams to match and points to match, so that'll be really good. One other thing to note, when you are putting this together, in this block, I press the seams underneath the outside rows, but in the one that's next to it, when you're assembling it, you're going to want to press those underneath the inside row, and that'll mean that your seams are going to nest on the side. So basically, half the blocks pressed to the outside and half pressed to the inside, and you will have a block that, or a quilt top that goes together super easy. So make sure you head on over to shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com to get the pattern to go with this. This is, at the time that I'm filming this, just available as a digital download on our website. If you are a Stashing with Stephanie subscriber, you are going to have access to this pattern for free. And we're going to send you a special code where you can get these patterns for free. So that's a great deal. Again, Stash with Stephanie is this great program we have. It's a stash club where you get 12 fat quarters for the price of 10. So you're getting 3 yards for $29.99 plus shipping every month. And they are fabrics that are chosen by me and color coordinated by me. So that way you have 12 fat quarters that you can do something fabulous with. You're now going to be getting a free pattern to go with that, and you get a $10 off coupon for a $20 purchase, so you can get additional yardage. So if you were doing this pattern, you would be able to make an entire baby quilt for about $40 plus shipping, so that's pretty good. So check that out. I hope you enjoy it, and until next time, happy quilting.